Hello and welcome to the public meeting of the DC Lodge. Thank you so much for joining us today. And as always, let's start with a short invocation by Annie Besant. And everybody's muted. I muted everybody because I invite you to read the invocation out loud to strengthen the vibration. O hidden life, vibrant in every atom. O hidden light, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May all who feel themselves as one with thee know they are therefore one with every other. And today we have a special guest. She is a friend of our member Adrian. Her name is Sophy Burnham, and she's an author of 17 books. So she has published novels, nonfiction, journalism, short stories, plays, children books, and magazine articles. Her works are translated into 25 languages, and 3 of her books were New York Times bestsellers, and most have received literary book club recognition. She's going to talk about her most recent book, The Wonder and Happiness of Being Old, Offerings of Hope, Joy, and New Ways to Perceive Aging. And it was published in the US and in the UK, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Brazil, and Spain. She has received awards, and her favorite one is Daughter of Mark Twain from the Mark Twain Society. And her 2018 article for Modern Life was printed in the New York Times, and it inspired a film that was made, and it's called Modern Love. She's a frequent public speaker, and she has been on shows like Larry King Live, Oprah twice, The Today Show, Good Morning America, and CBS News. And she has led workshops both at home and in Europe. Thank you so much for agreeing to be here with us, Sophy. And with that, I'm going to turn it over. As always, I invite you to turn on your cameras so Sophy can see your faces. But of course, it's not necessary. But I think it's lovely if you do that. And then you lead it from here. At the end, when there are questions, I can help you moderate it, or you can do it yourself. Go ahead, Sophy.
Well, thank you very much, Suzanne, for that introduction. And I'm going to tell you, first of all, what I'm going to talk about today. And then I'm going to talk about it. And then I'm going to tell you what I talked about. So, first of all, this is the Theosophical Society of DC. And it's right up my alley because theosophical means wisdom of God or divine wisdom or the search for divine wisdom. And that's what I've been doing all my life. So all of my books are this search for God. And sometimes in my life, it has been really difficult, grinding, losing track, losing the whole thing. And then other moments have been this sense of being washed by light and divine, I won't say knowledge, but by divine inspiration, maybe. And so what I'm going to talk about tonight is the beauty of age and what we learn and what there is about being old that is such a gift. If you live long enough to reach old age, that it's really deeply different. And I hope that if you have questions, you'll ask me questions. Now, this book, which looks like this in the American version, began when I was sitting in a sidewalk cafe in Paris, and you can imagine the September light falling on the cobblestones. And I'm having espresso with my young cousin. And she turned to me suddenly, and now I'm going to read the opening of this book. "I'm 59, she said with a haunted look. "In a few months, I'll be 60. And then, ducking her head shyly, "What's it like to be?" And then she choked on the word old. But I knew what she was too tactful to say. "I'm afraid," she whispered then. Imagine, I'm afraid of being old. But of course you are. Who wouldn't be afraid? You move now to the stage of crone and hag. Fear is what we mostly hear about aging. Fear of wrinkles, fear of loss, fear of diminishment, humiliation, and of being unwanted, abandoned. Fear of the inexorable decline into chronic pain and death. Fear of finding ourselves like King Lear crying naked on the cliffs against the raging storm. It's fear exacerbated by a $48.4 billion beauty business, pushing 18-year-old airbrushed skin as our ideal. Who wouldn't be afraid? I remember as I turned 60 asking my Aunt Kate that same question. What's it like in your 60s? She answered with a toss of her chin, visible even over the phone line. Oh, Sophie, you won't even notice your 60s. Now at 90, she had murmured thoughtfully, you begin to slow down. She died at 103. That's 40 years longer than 60. Sitting with Eleanor that day in Paris, I repeated her words. Oh, Eleanor, you won't even notice your 60s. I bought my horse at 68. I stopped fox hunting at 80, mostly because of moving to Massachusetts, I admit, but also because a fall when galloping to hounds is dangerous at my age, any age. The zeros are always scary. I remember being anxious when I reached 29 at turning 30. It felt so old. I didn't celebrate my 50th birthday until at 55 I threw myself a 50th, but only for my closest female friends. That's how ashamed I was of age. Buried deep in our DNA is the memory of unwanted women burned at the stake as witches or drowned, surviving proved them witches to be killed again. Sipping my espresso that warm September day, I thought how at 85, this is one of the most interesting periods of my whole life. I have never felt so happy, so free. I wouldn't have missed it for the world. Well, I would have, except my friend Death was otherwise occupied. Now back home in Massachusetts, I keep musing on your question. What's it like to be old? At 85, I'm old. I'm told I'm old. I'm regarded as old. I don't feel old. I feel about 55. So I thought I'd try to answer your question. And the rest of the book is this series of unsent letters to Eleanor, in which I'm writing about what it's like to be old. Well, time has passed since I was 85, and yesterday I celebrated my 89th birthday, and I have even more to say about the gifts of being old. What we think about usually with being old and what is going to happen to us is maybe the painting of Whistler's mother. Do you know this painting? I wish I had an image of it that I could put on the screen, but it's Whistler's mother in profile in a rocking chair, all in gray and greens and blacks. And it is very subtle and very subdued. But what the picture doesn't tell you is that inside she is an explosion of color. And in a moment, she's going to leap out of her chair and say, "Okay, Jimmy, enough. I've got things to do. I've got to get out of these awful clothes. You go paint. I've got stuff to do." Because I'll tell you, if you have your health, it is not at all like what we think of as Jerry Whistler's mother in her rocking chair. And even if you don't have your health, because something happens when you are getting older. And what happens is that you get happier and happier. I don't know if you can see this little drawing from the book. Put it as close as I can. This is from the Brookings Institution, and it is a little thing about how here, when you're 9 years old, that's how happy you are. And when you come down here into your 40s and 50s, that's the low point of happiness. And it goes upward until 95. And I think that this is the point of getting old. The point of getting old is that now, in the last years of your life, when inside you're 20 or 30 years younger than you are, you begin to understand what life is about. And this is an enormous gift. Now, I've got lots of quotations in this book of the wonder and happiness of being old. And here is a quotation that is not in the book. This is by Rilke, the German poet. For one human being to a lover, I'll start again. For one human being to love another, that is perhaps the most difficult of all our tasks. The ultimate, the last test and proof, the work for which all other work is but preparation. For this reason, young people who are beginners in everything cannot yet know love. They have to learn it. Now, this is one of the things that happens as you get old. You just love everything. I'm going to speak about I instead of you because we're all different. But now that I have the shadow of death on my shoulder, every minute is infinitely beautiful. It might be the last time I look at it. Look at that leaf. Look at that bird and the bird feeder. Here's a bird I haven't ever seen before. Here's a squirrel swarming up the tree. What a miracle. And as you get older, I think this is the way life is supposed to be. You have all of the years of your life that you can remember so that, as Madeleine L'Engle says, the great thing about being old is you don't lose all the other ages you've been, but you see them with new eyes. Of all the things that happens to you when you're old, I think the most fascinating is the fact that you don't feel old. You feel 30 years younger. I feel at 89, perhaps 60. I land on a number, but I remember this in earlier years too. When I was 60, I didn't feel 60, I felt 40. And people have talked about this. The great secret, says Doris Lessing, that all old people share is that you really haven't changed in 70 or 80 years. Your body changes, but you don't change at all. And that, of course, causes great confusion. Or Oscar Wilde, the tragedy of old age is not that one is old, but that one is young. Now, what has this got to do with divine wisdom or the direct knowledge of the divine or mysticism or all of the other meanings that we think of when we think of theosophical? As I said, I've spent a lifetime trying to understand what life is about. Oh, how to go into this for a moment? I wrote a book. Well, my earliest book was not about the search for the divine. It was about this physical world and about how I could understand it. And it was about the contemporary art world, my first book. And I was trying to understand how something as beautiful and idealistic as art could turn out to be so corrupted when you looked at dealers and critics, auctions, museums, collectors, and your idea of what is art shifts depending on what is in a museum and not trusting your own eye. But then later, I started on a great search for God. I was probably 38, I think, when I realized that I had absolutely everything. I had a husband and children. We had a lovely house in Georgetown. And I remember looking in the mirror and thinking, is this all? Is this all? Surely there's something more. And so I began this long search that I'm sure that each of you has individually been on. Longing for God, searching for God, trying to find God. And then one day, because I had been praying and meditating and fasting and longing for so much, I was given the gift of a revelation of God. And I won't say that I saw the divine, but I saw close to it. I think the image itself would have burned me up, like who was the Greek who fell in love with Zeus and burst into a flame. But I came close to it. Now, some years earlier, when I was 28, I'd had my life saved by an angel very dramatically. And in that, I'll tell you that story because it's so extraordinary. And yet, it didn't affect me. I was skiing in Val d'Isere with my husband, and it was absolutely beautiful. Val d'Isere is way above the tree line, so you just have fields of snow. And it hadn't snowed for a long time, and the snow was like ball bearings under your skis. And I fell down at the top of a hill, and I went off the piste. I was supposed to turn down this way. I'm coming down here. I'm supposed to turn and go around the corner, but I didn't, and I fell down. And then I was going down the hill with my skis over my head first downhill. You're never supposed to get off the piste because you can start an avalanche or fall off a cliff or something, and they didn't in those days at least ever have ski patrol looking for you after the day was over. Anyway, I'm falling headfirst at least 20 miles an hour on these billions of ball bearings. And suddenly I saw the sky through my skis, and it was all colors, colors I don't even know the name of. It was green and purple and blue and pink, and my heart leapt out of my body and it cried, home. And at that moment, I was stopped. And I was stopped by a man against his legs. And then I have to take you up above where my husband was standing watching me fall. And a man came tearing down the slope past him and skied past me, and he stopped, and I fell against his legs. Here are his legs. I fell against his legs. Now, anybody who skis knows that both of you fall down in a collapse of skis, and it's just horrible. But I landed as if put down in a cradle. I didn't even have a stiff neck from landing head first against his legs. And he did not hop or do anything. He just lay there. So I stood up and I wanted to, first I looked at him and his eyes were pools of love. It was so gorgeous. It was the way all of us want to be looked at in our life. So I wanted to hear him speak, and I said, merci, monsieur. And he didn't speak. He turned and he went herringboning up the hill. And when he reached my husband, who reached out to him to touch him or say anything, he just shot off. And I came a little bit later up the hill and met David, and David said, that was amazing. Are you okay? I said, I'll talk to you later. And I shot off after this man. And when I came around the corner, there was no one there. The whole valley was spread out before me. There was no way he could have skied that fast down to the town of Teen, where the little tiny black ants were people down there. But I looked over to my left and I realized, I'd fallen at the top, and I would have gone down this cliff and fallen on huge boulders. So I spent the week looking for him and never saw him again. I wanted to have him look at me again with those eyes. I was 28 at the time. I did not believe in God. And I decided that it hadn't happened. So I put it aside, or that I would figure out what happened later. But the odd thing about that is that, unlike most memories that fade with time, it becomes clearer. So the next huge opening that I had into the divine was when I had this time that I was telling you about earlier of seeing not God, but the passing of his garment as the grass waved behind him, and this sense of light and divinity. I'm going to come to old age, I promise you. So at that point, I was about 46 when I had that, and it changed my life. It's not that I became different, but that I saw things differently. And I think that this is what we get to do during our lives. And when we're old, in the last quarter of our lives, we get to live it as if every moment is precious, as if we've never loved again, as if we love with such boundless exuberance that it's like being in love every moment. And we're able to forgive. I think if there's anything that you learn in old age, it's to forgive yourself and to forgive other people. Now, if you've already had angels entering your life and a vision of the divine, wouldn't you think that you already knew it all? But that's not the way it works, because God is the great destroyer of our images of God. And therefore, we're always a little bit bereft. I have had so many examples of what I call the mysterious happening in my life that you would think that I could never, never doubt. But I do doubt nonetheless. I remember once when I lost a hearing aid, a little brown hearing aid, only about this big, and I lost it in the arena where I'd been working my horse. So it's exactly the color of the dirt in the arena. I haven't a prayer of finding that, and it probably has had dirt pushed over it by the latest horse's hooves going over it, if they're not just crushed in it. But I went back to the arena and I said, God help me. And I walked to the middle of the arena and I picked up the hearing aid and put it on. Now, that's just about impossible. And another time, I was traveling from England to Paris on the Channel, deep under the water of the English Channel, La Manche. And I had brought my cell phone with me, but I'd forgotten to bring a charger. So my cell phone was completely out of charge. It hadn't charged in 2 days, and it had completely gone out of charge. So I'm underground and underwater by however many fathoms. And it suddenly occurred to me that it was 10:30 at night. And when I reached Paris, I didn't know the code of the outside door to get into the apartment where I was going to be staying. It will be 11 o'clock or 11:30. The streets will be empty, and I'll be standing outside the door wondering what the code is. And I wondered to myself, how am I ever going to find this? And just then, my phone rang, even though I was on the train, and it was the landlord saying, it occurred to me that I hadn't given you the phone number, the code number. It's blah, 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 blah. At which point my phone went dead again. But I had the code. So all my life, I've had these incredible things happening. And during much of my youth, I kept trying to find the spiritual. Well, I'm going to give you a big hint. The spiritual, everything is spiritual. And this is what I've discovered in my old age. It isn't that there's any place to search. I now think that the physical world is spiritual, and that squirrel swarming up the tree is evident of the spiritual. It's God talking to me. It's a miracle, just as having my life saved by an angel is a miracle. And I think that this is why old age becomes so precious. I look at babies now all the time. I live across the street from a kindergarten, and there are ages 1 to 3, and then upper school children of 4 to 5. And they all come out to play. And I watch entranced. It doesn't matter that I had children and grandchildren of my own. I don't think I ever really looked at children before. It's different. I don't have to take care of them. I don't have to, I'm not responsible for them, and I can look at them as what they really are. And of course, I see people with their aura around them. Now, you can't see it on the screen. You can't see it in a photograph. But sometimes when I'm feeling pissy and I don't like myself, I remind myself to look at the people around me and to see their aura around them. And when I see their light shining out of them, usually at the head is the easiest place to see it, or this place, this triangle this triangle here. You can see the light very clearly. If they are in a loving space, their light is enormous. If they're angry or afraid, it closes in on them. And that's really wonderful to see too. Now I give psychic readings. I discovered I'm a psychic and a medium. And for 30 or 40 years, I've been giving readings. I give them over the phone now, but the most fun are when you can give them in person. Sometimes I ask for an object, but I've learned after the pandemic that I don't need an object to read anybody.
You are so beautiful.
Excuse me?
Nothing. I muted somebody.
Oh, okay. I don't need to do psychometry and hold on to their earring or keys or whatever, because I just ask for their name and their birthday, and somehow all the information comes pouring through. I believe that all of us are psychic. I think we all have intuition, and from the intuition, we all have the ability to give psychic readings and mediumship, where a spirit comes through. If a spirit comes through, I'm working as a medium between two worlds. And for some people, it's really important that a spirit comes through. They want to know that there's an afterlife and that their loved ones are happy. But truthfully, I don't think it's very important. What you learn, what I give in the psychic readings, I think is more important to the person who's come as often as confirmation of things they already know, because we already know all of it. And as you get older, you come to trust this. I say that we can all be psychic and all do mediumship. What we're missing is the confidence to do it, and we're missing the opportunity to do it. So I'll say, if any of you want to try it, spend some time before you pick up the phone and look to see who it is. Ask yourself, who is calling me on the phone? And most of the time, you know who it is. This information, this knowledge is carried on ribbons of love. I think we're all connected. Your beautiful prayer, Suzanne, that you read in the beginning, that says everything. It talks about the light. It talks about love. It talks about being one. And this is what you learn in old age, and then how to use it. Now, there's another thing that I want to speak to you about. We're always aware of the losses. All of life is loss. And I think that this is an important, really, really important thing. I have a section on loss. which I probably can. Oh, here it is. It opened to it. Loss colors all our lives. As soon as we discover something of value, we're afraid of losing it. Yet life is nothing but loss, beginning with the loss of safe, warm darkness at birth, when comfort explodes in light and noise, the loss of childhood, loss of innocence, loss of friends and much loved animals, the loss of brothers, mothers, fathers, loss of investments, loss of homes with their creaking floorboards and cribs and cozy nooks, loss of jobs and marriages, loss of children, loss of dreams, and the repeated loss of self-esteem, and always hanging over us the loss of self that will be produced by death, which is to say, the extinction for us of the entire world. So, of course, we're afraid of loss. But it isn't loss that's bad, it's how we deal with it. That's what I mean, Eleanor, about knowing that everything is temporary. Even this body I inhabit, it's rented. I live in it like a suitcase, which gets so beat up over the decades that eventually it's uninhabitable. And then I'll pull myself out like a white shirt waving in the breeze, and I'll move on. I'm told I can always rent another body if I want. But the losses are also gifts, and we don't recognize that when we're younger. So we think of old age as a diminishment. And yes, I have lost energy. I don't move as quickly. I don't think as quickly. But as a result, I see more deeply. I'm aware in ways that are so powerful of this moment or this friend that I'm talking to now. And everything becomes precious and everything becomes, can I use this word? God. Everything becomes divine. Even the negative, the resentments that allow me to examine myself more clearly. Why do I have a resentment? Why are my feelings hurt? Oh, yes. Well, I couldn't have done that when I was 40. I need to be 80 to do that. I'm going to stop and ask if there are questions. There's so much that I can say, so much that I can give you, but it's really about love.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for this beautiful lecture. And many members in at the Theosophical Society are older, um, which you explained very well why this is the case. But I think it's wonderful that you give an opportunity to all of us to ask questions. So, as always, you have two ways. I have the participants list open, and you can just unmute yourself and I'll call your name, or you can raise your hand. And the first comment, and I will also observe the chat, and says, who is, by the way, a young member, right? Not an older. He said, this was beautiful. Thank you so much. And it
Thank you
was.
for that.
You came from the heart. Oh, I'm so glad that we picked this topic. Veronique, go ahead.
Yeah, Sophie, thank you so much. Your sharing opened my heart. And I am also at this age, like your cousin, I think you mentioned your cousin earlier in the talk, who was at the age where you become older, and have all these questions. So thank you so much. You said something that I would like you to expand on a little bit, if possible. Maybe you answered it in part when you explain your ski fall and the man who saved your life. you said God is the great destroyer of our images of God. And I was wondering if you could expand a little bit on that.
Yes, when you're children, you're taught about God as a white male anthropomorphic loving figure, omnipotent and eternal, and so on. It doesn't take long to realize that this is not the God that you can handle anymore. You might be 9 or you might be 15, but you lose your faith in that God. And then you make up another. Maybe it's just an energy, or maybe it's a goddess, or I just came back from a trip to Egypt where I discovered that Isis, the goddess of love, was worshipped in France up until the 500s AD. So the goddess is tremendously powerful image of God. But then you discover that that also isn't enough. And you don't know what it is, but your heart knows. I think ultimately it's an energy of love. I think it holds the whole universe together. Gravity is nothing but love trying to meet. But what do I know? I can only glimpse little bits of it at the edges of my eyes because I'm a human. I know that God is in me, that I am formed of Godness, that we are all formed of Godness, and that we find it with our hearts. We don't find it with knowledge.
Thank you.
Thank you, Veronica, for this question. And I just wanted to let you know that a lot of things that you're saying are very theosophical, even the last comment. Now, Charlie, why don't you unmute and make your comment? I watched you during the talk and I saw you smile. He said, "Thank you. It was beautiful presentation words. And vocal sharing. But don't you think some of aging is so individual where one is in their life and their consciousness also to some degree, the difficulty of generalization?" So if I don't know if you want to unmute Charlie, but this is the question that he's asking.
Oh, it's a wonderful, wonderful talk. Thank you so much. It was just, we are all in different places of life. I mean, life is so different for so many different peoples in the world. So aging is a different process for each individual as they get older. So it was wonderful what you said, but at the same time, it was part of its generalizations of the process, and some of it isn't, of course.
Do you want me to comment on that?
I don't know. It's just
Oh, I would like to. I'd like to very much because I recognize I'm writing this 3 years ago. And I recognize that I live in a very privileged place. I'm a white woman living in America. I'm not a migrant trekking across the jungles. I'm not fleeing war. I'm not in Gaza trying to feed my children. I'm deeply aware of the privilege. And then the privilege also of having a spiritual life, which is an incredible gift. And there are people who don't have it. Since in the 3 years since I've written this book, politics have changed, and I think it's gotten a lot worse for older people, and particularly for older people living on very little money. I'm deeply aware of it, Charlie, and humbled by it and by the courage of human beings. I think we're just heroic. There was a question that was written out, somebody wanting me to answer about the physical world. Oh, thank you. You put in Whistler's mother in the in the chat. That's great. The physical world as spiritual. I can't explain it. It came to me only fairly recently in the last couple of years that everything alive is shining with light. The trees are alive. The trees, you can see, if you look between the branches, you can see the light that they emit. If we had sharp enough hearing, we could hear the deep rumble that they use to talk. I once met a really, really angry tree. I've never met any tree that was not either indifferent or loving. But when I was in Belize some years ago, I saw a beautiful tree on a hilltop. It just took my breath away. And I started to go toward it, and I felt myself stopped like a hand at my chest. This tree is angry and it does not want you close to it. And I reverently bowed and backed away, wondering why it was so mad at me. And I asked the tour guide, who was busy looking at the Mayan pyramids, about the tree. He said, "That's a mahogany tree." This whole area was a mahogany forest. And they came and clear cut everything. That must have been a little sapling at the time. And it's the only tree that's left. And it hates, he didn't know this, but I knew it hates humans. It would have dropped a branch on me if it could have killed me. And so I'm aware that trees are sentient beings. Of course, we know that animals are, and the scientists can work all they want, but we know that. And everything living is an expression of the divine. And I hope that explains it, whoever asked the question.
Yeah. Charlie, thank you, I believe. I don't know, Jean, if you wanted to say something. I muted you. If yes, just let me know. But Bill is next, and then Sue and Adonia, I saw your question in the chat, so I'll ask that afterwards. Bill, go ahead.
Thank you for your talk, Sophie. I'm inspired by your words. I want to ask you about the problem of dementia
Ah,
and
isn't that
and how that fits into your frame of reference. So I can tell you that my mother had dementia. Fortunately, in her case, it was very brief before she died. And I don't think she herself suffered much. On the other hand, I have a friend whose parent has dementia, and she's had it for 10 years. My friend has had to visit her, and she doesn't recognize her, and this has been like 9 or 10 years. So this is very bad. So how does that fit in your frame of reference? Thank you.
being alive is really, really hard.
Mhm.
Being born. I believe that we agree to be born, and horrible things happen to some people. And I have no idea. I know people who have had dementia, and it is awful. My very, very close friend, summa cum laude from Radcliffe, got dementia, and she lost her most valuable asset. My father had a stroke and lost his ability to speak, which was the thing most valuable to him. He was a lawyer. He loved to argue. He loved to argue before the Supreme Court. Arguing was his whole favorite thing. And yet, once he lost his ability to speak, I understood for the first time how much he loved me. I'd never seen it before, but his whole being shone out of his eyes. When I came in, and he would say, hello. But it was so loving. I know a woman with dementia, all she did her entire life long was complain. And now in dementia, she's forgotten what there was to complain about, and instead she's happy. And that's a beauty of it. But I can't deny how painful it is for those of us still living to see the people that we loved and realize they may not be there inside. I think we're living too long. We're not intended to live this long. But sometimes the dementia comes when someone is only 55 or 60. And that's just tragic. I don't have any answers, Bill.
Well, thank you for the question and explanation. I have Sue, and then I'll go to Adonia and then to Veronique. And thank you, Jean. Please drive carefully. Go ahead. Yeah, Sue, go ahead.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for your talk. I appreciate it very much. I wanted to ask you about what you observe with people's auras when they're happy, when they're feeling love, maybe meditation or on a walk or seeing beauty. And then if a thought comes in that person's mind or my mind, whatever, and it's kind of negative, if it's a negative memory, resentment or whatever, does the aura change right then? And can it come back to that happy place? I'm just curious what you notice. Over.
The answer is yes. And when they're speaking loving thoughts or you're remembering a loving moment, it gets huge. And then it can collapse, but it comes back again. But there is something that's important, Sue, awareness. Now, that's the problem with dementia. There's no awareness. But if you're aware, you can see it. And I recommend you practice it if you don't see it anyway. And watch the negative thoughts and watch them in yourself, because you'll realize that you're either expanding or retracting. Things happen to the brain, and we have electrical energy in the brain. I think that's what's going on.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. I have Adonia and then Veronique and Adrian. So Adonia, she said, I would like Sophie to expand on the idea that the physical world is a spiritual world.
I think Sophie already answered that question. So can I ask another one?
Sure, go ahead, Adonia.
Hi, Sophie. We've met several times. I'm Adrian's friend. I want you to tell me what you think is life after death. What does it consist of?
Well, I know that our personality continues. I know that consciousness continues. I know that it is wonderful. I have never seen anything that indicates hell. It might be that there is no such thing as hell except inside our human minds. That is to say that humans create hell. But after life, do you mind if I tell another story? My brother never came back after he died. And I was so disappointed. I'm the psychic. And I never saw my brother. But the day that he died, the evening that he died, the day after he had died, all the lights went out in their house. The lights didn't go out in any other houses around them, only in their house. Flicker, 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 and then go out. And everybody laughed, saying, yes, that's George. Not long ago, I had a session with an animal communicator about my horse who was acting up, and I wanted her to behave herself. So we had a long conversation about the horse, which changed her behavior, I might add. And at the end of it, the animal communicator, who's in California, and I'm on the phone talking to him, he said, did you have a brother who died? I said, yes. And all of a sudden, there was my brother right in front of me, seen from his waist up. He's surrounded by golden light. And he says, this is terrific. And then he said to me, I don't know why you're envious that I don't come to you. He said, I'm with you all the time. I love you. So I don't know what happens on the other side. Frequently, when I'm giving a reading, a spirit will come through, not always, because they're not our slaves. And they usually have a message of love and forgiveness, or I'm so sorry, I didn't know. I've never had one come and say anything cruel. You made a mess of that. I've just never had it. So I only know that there is an afterlife and that it includes consciousness. And of course, it does not include the body.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what in Theosophy we make a distinction. The personality dies. Like if I were to die, Susanne Hopfel-Wellenhofer dies. But the individuality, the soul, that lives on. So that's very nice. I have Veronique, go ahead.
Thank you for the story of your brother. I love it. And thank you also for mentioning that the physical world is spiritual. When I was young, for too long, I neglected my body, and matter was not important, but the body, the incarnation is spiritual. And since then, I have discovered a book that you may have heard about, Talking with Angel, which is a transcription of messages from God to a group of people during the Second World War. And in that book, there is a sentence that is very beautiful. It says, matter is the child of God.
There you are. I believe that.
And I love
you.
that.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, and then just since Adonia, since you're a friend of Adrian, and she is very knowledgeable of theosophical writings, Charlie said Theosophy has ideas there are multiple levels people can be at after death, but the one level, the Devachan, is the the divine level where there is bliss. So we talk a lot about people being in bliss after they transition. Adrian, go ahead. Oh, just one moment, since it's 1 o'clock for those who have to leave. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll continue right now. And just remember, the next Zoom meeting is on the 10th of January, since we have holidays coming up, the Christmas for many of us, and then after that we have the New Year's Eve, and then our lodge meets in person on the 3rd of January. So we are going to meet again on the 10th. And thank you for being here. And then I hand it over. Go ahead, Adrian.
Sophie, thank you for coming. I don't have a question, I have a comment. And when I first saw the title of your book, even though I'm at the age where age should matter, I said, what does this book have to do with me? As a person who engages in abstractions and theory and trying to get the highest, more depth of thought. For an example, today we're talking about what's the distinction between the soul? What's the relationship of the soul to the body? What's the relationship of the body to the higher mind? And we separate all of these things, and sometimes we forget the body, and that it's the ground of the body where we have this experience that leads like a flower to all of these things. And your presentation, you weave with such a light, and you combine this into a unity, into a fabric of oneness that is such a delight for me, that it makes me feel that I was insane to ever have first asked the question, what does age have to do with me? So I want to thank you for your brilliance. You have such an open heart, and I aspire to the softness that you radiate. Thank you.
Oh, Adrian, what a wonderful comment. Thank you so much. Oh, I love you so much, Adrian.
I can only
She's a
second.
special woman.
Yes, I can only second what Adrian said. Roxanne, go ahead.
Roxanne.
Thank you so much. This has been lovely. I really appreciate it. And I'm new to this group. I just wanted to share a couple of experiences. And one was with my father, who was gravely ill in the hospital. And he said, and I think I'll always remember this, he said, I never thought about getting old. So he was busy thinking about being productive and, doing creative things with his life. And he's like, I never thought about getting old. And then the other thing I wanted to share was when you spoke about animal communicators. I was living in Arizona and I had 3 dogs, and one dog died. And I was so grief stricken. I went to hospice for grief support because they had a support group for people who have lost their pets. And so I was really blocked. I was really having a hard time. I love this dog so much. So they referred me to an animal communicator. And so the only information I gave the animal communicator about my dog was the breed and the name. And I don't remember if I gave the age or not, but like just 2 or 3 pieces of information. The following Saturday, she came to my house with a notebook. And she sat down on my sofa. And in that notebook was everything about my 2 other dogs that were living and the relationship my deceased dog had with these 2 other dogs. And it was all spot on. I never mentioned to her that I had 2 other dogs. Because I was focused on my dog that had passed away. But yet she showed up. I still have that spiral bound notebook. She gave me it. And so my dog that passed away just was going on and on and on about his relationship with these 2 other dogs that I had. And, he said, I don't have to wear a leash in heaven. So it
Thank you
just,
so much for sharing.
I have a real strong belief that some people can really connect with animals and they can understand. They can really, really do communicate with them.
Did
They
you want
really
to add something, Sophie, to that?
No, I have nothing to add to that. There are animal communicators, and some people are gifted with that. Other people are gifted with mathematics. Other people are gifted with inventions. I don't know. But we're all a unit. And I do believe that we're bound by love. I want to say one last thing before we got up. I'm sorry that I took so long in my talk. But one thing that my book has, and I hope that some of you at least will think of giving it as a Christmas present to other people who are afraid, even though I know you're not, but so many people are afraid. When I was 21, and in Smith College, the night of my 21st birthday to be, I sat down and wrote myself a letter to be opened when I was 42, 21 years later. And in it, I tried to put down what I thought was the meaning of life and why I was here and what was I doing and what did I hope and want in my life. It's just one piece of paper written on two sides in real ink with a fountain pen. In those days, it was that long ago. And then when I was 42, before opening that letter, I wrote another letter to myself to be opened at 63. And at 63, I wrote 3 letters. I had so much to say about what life was about that I wrote 3 letters. And at 84, I wrote what is probably my last letter, because I don't expect to be alive to read it at 105. But the 4 letters are the 4 stages of my life in 21 year circle. And they say different things. Although at 84, I'm closer to saying what I said at 21 than at the other 2 letters. And what I knew at 21 was try to do no harm. Doing good seemed too big because I understood even at that early age the difference between desire and execution. That you think you're doing good and something awful comes out of it. But trying to do no harm seemed like a major thing. And at 84, I was talking more to my younger selves than I was to the 105-year-old woman. I didn't care about what happens in the future, but I was writing about forgiving myself for all those times when I thought that I'd made mistakes or taken the wrong turn. All of the Baroque curly cues that happened in my life and which ended up making me me. And so I want to end with the quotation by Anne Lamott, who's one of my favorite writers. Age has given me, she writes, what I was looking for my entire life. It has given me me. It has provided time and experience and failures and triumphs and time-tested friends who have helped me step in the shape that was waiting for me. I fit into me now. I have an organic life, finally, not necessarily the one people imagined for me or tried to get me to have. I have the life I longed for. I have become the woman I hardly dared imagine I would be. And so,
Well, thank you so much. And this was absolutely beautiful. And Sophie, if somebody wants to reach out to you for a psychic reading, can I just share your email with them?
absolutely. They can write me at info@sophieburnham.com or go ahead and ask me and I'll hand the message on to my assistant who does all my scheduling.
Okay,
And
that's wonderful. Good. I'm glad to know
wish
that.
everybody happiness and a really good inner life.
That that is wonderful. And again, thank you for an inspiring talk, coming from the heart, touching us all deeply. And to everybody else, have happy holidays. And as we say in Austria, a good slide into the new year. I see the DC members on the 3rd of January and everybody else on Zoom and on the 10th. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
You.